I want to thank you all for being here today. Rivers Alliance is proud to co-host this with DEP and to have so many great groups here in the room. In case you're not familiar with Rivers Alliance, we were formed to fight for sound water policies at the state and federal level, to provide education on water resources, and to advocate for any person or group striving to protect water. So, whether you're with an agency or a watershed group, as many of you are that are here, a conservation organization, a hunting and fishing club, or a local advocacy or action group, and whether you're full-time or you're a volunteer, whatever group you're here with, if you are working to improve and protect water resources, we all have something in common: a passion. A passion for our local waters. A passion to keep them healthy and free-flowing. The work that you all do is impressive, and I want to thank you for being here to put it all on display. In addition to letting everyone else know what you're doing, I hope you take this opportunity to learn what everyone else is doing. Perhaps there are opportunities to partner with groups previously unknown to you, to find volunteer opportunities or a source of volunteers, to get together to leverage sources of funding and resources. We can do great things with a little knowledge and some passion, but we can be much more effective if we build stronger partnerships. Together, we're a stronger team. So, as we go forth with today, like I said, I want you to connect with someone you don't know in the room. Maybe find out about other groups in your area that are working that you can connect with. I encourage you to look at our website and see if your organization is on there and the contact information is correct. We're sort of a hub for all of the groups that work with water here in Connecticut. So please contact Tony at Rivers Alliance if you, and you can grab our information and cards back there. We're also having a water networking conference on October 30th at the Lear Center in Richfield. We should have that information on our website in the coming week. There's also a Connecticut River exhibit here at Goodwin. And does anybody know where that is? I heard it's really
library on the second floor, near the coffee.
Yes, at the library on the second floor, which I can't wait to take a look at. And I'm going to do a little shout out for my previous organization, the Connecticut River Conservancy. On Friday and Saturday, they're having New England's largest river cleanup all along the Connecticut River watershed. You can go to ctriver.org to take a look and see where you can help there. So that's all I have, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you. So, kind of the way today's going to go, I'm going to talk for a little while this morning to give you some background on integrated water resource management in case you weren't involved in the public process that we held back in 2016. So you can kind of understand where that's coming from and where we're going and give you an idea of the work that we've been doing. So we'll do that next, take some time for questions and discussions, and then we'll take a break and allow people more time to go back and do the real work of connecting at the tables. After that, we'll come back up here, and we have 3 of our partner organizations that are going to be presenting some of the work that they're doing. So with that, again, my name's Traci Iott. I'm a supervisor at Connecticut DEEP, and my responsibilities is the water quality group. Although with integrated water resource management and just good governance, we're trying to collaborate and work very closely with a lot of other different programs. But my actual responsibilities, direct responsibilities, are water quality standards, and then things that implement the standards like the TMDL program. We provide assistance to water quality-based permitting. We do some cleanup at sites. So we have a broad scope. So again, the objective is to give you some background, let you know what we've been doing, and give you, some idea of where you can also provide us some feedback. So this is the process for environmental protection that pretty much you all work with. We monitor environmental quality, we evaluate the data, and then we put together some plans to either focus on restoration or protection of the water bodies that we're working with, and then we go to implementation. Integrated water resource management really focuses on that planning piece, to bring everybody together to make sure we have sound scientific foundation, good community foundation, so that we understand what is needed for our objectives and we can put a plan in place. So that's where we're focusing today. Integrated water resource management had a different name from EPA. It was called the 303D vision, which isn't very exciting either, but basically the states and EPA came together in around 2010 to 2012 and was started out by looking at the TMDL program. There's been a lot of work going on across the nation, a lot of TMDLs in place, but there was, it was clear from the states and from EPA that some programmatic changes could benefit, the putting together watershed plans, but we wanted to do something within the context of the Clean Water Act as it existed and not think about changing the law. So we looked at the law together, states and EPA, to see what we could do within the bounds of the law. And the focus was on letting states reevaluate where they're going to do water quality work based on state-specific water quality concerns. Sounds like it makes a lot of sense, but sometimes the programs get ahead of steam and need to do something on a short time period, and so sometimes that time period, would drive where actions were taken. So this was to step back and say, let's let the states work with partners, reevaluate what your water quality goals are, and then also expand the scope of these plans to include both restoration, bringing water quality back to a good condition, but also include protection. So where we have good water quality, let's work to maintain that good water quality, because in many cases, if we can protect it so it doesn't become impaired, there's a lot of community benefits to that, and it's a lot easier to keep it at a good water quality than as opposed to having to bring it back. Wanted to renew the partnerships and establish a more collaborative approach with all of the partners who are involved in the watershed. Certainly, watershed advocates such as you are critical for that, but also reaching out to the regulated community and anyone who's interested in that particular watershed to bring them into the planning process. The idea being that if we all worked together, then we would more likely be able to move forward to implementation together. And the last part of this was to use the right tool for the job. Coming from the TMDL program, TMDLs are very prescriptive as to what the different components of a TMDL needs to be, but sometimes TMDLs aren't the right tool. They're great, I love them, but they're not always the best tool. The simple example that was given as the states and EPA were talking about things was that, let's say you have a water body that's got bacteria impairments, and you see the cows in the stream. You don't need us to write a TMDL for waste load and load allocations to say you need to get the cows out of the stream. So you could do things like a TMDL alternative, which would be, in that case, a straight to implementation approach. Let's talk to the farmer, let's get the cows out of the stream. Or let's use a watershed-based plan if you're in a watershed that's mostly a non-point source program. Or use things that other groups are doing to get to water quality restoration and protection. So this vision, or what we call the Connecticut Integrated Water Resource Management, was to try and look for flexibility to do the right thing and get us to focusing on what's important for Connecticut and getting to implementation. It's establishing, again, that bridge. Still the framework of the 303D or TMDL program is that connection between having the science and the data with the implementation, the boots on the ground, whether it's a regulatory program or it's a watershed program. So this is the framework that we're working within. And again, the big benefit, I think, besides having Connecticut-specific goals, is where we were driven before by PACE. How many TMDLs could we do in a 2-year period? Now we can look at the water quality focus areas that we want to spend time on. Sometimes you can't solve a complex problem in a 2-year time period. Sometimes it takes longer. And so this allows us to broaden our planning horizons and address things that take a longer time period. So that was the framework, and EPA and the states were doing that, and EPA came out and published the collaborative document that states and EPA came up with in January of 2012. So we actually started at DEEP working on integrated water resource management in 2012. And I'll give you an idea of what we were doing in the beginning parts. We were focusing a lot of time and effort on bacteria and stormwater in the beginning parts of integrated water resource management. During this time period, we developed a statewide approach to doing TMDLs for bacteria, which was hopefully to improve efficiency at the state to put the documents together, but also improve communication with anyone affected by the TMDL, so they understood what data was in there. Let's put a document together that provided a lot of resources and gave folks information necessary to be able to move to the next step. So the core document was this big general document, in this case about water quality and bacteria. Then the statewide model has appendices for each watershed. And this proved to be a really good tool for us for bacteria TMDLs. Now we had focused on bacteria because in 2010, when we took a look at the list, the impaired waters list, more than 50% of the waters on the impaired waters list in 2010 were impaired for bacteria. So it was either recreational use or shellfishing use. So that's why we started with bacteria, because clearly we had an issue and a responsibility to put some plans together. Between 2012 and 2016, we did 150 TMDLs for recreational use and 113 for shellfishing use, which was about 61% or so of the bacterial impaired waters from the 2010 list. So that framework and that approach allowed us to get a lot more plans in place. So that was one thing we were doing in the beginning. The other where we were working at that time was looking at stormwater and what could we do to address water quality impacts from stormwater. There's a lot of regulation that goes on for pipes, but it was more for industrial and for sewage treatment plant. We had permits that were coming up to address stormwater. So knowing that we're going to go into a large permitting process for stormwater, in our group we put together what would be a TMDL alternative. It was the Watershed Response Plan for Impervious Cover. Some of you may be familiar with the work that we did at University of Connecticut for an impervious cover TMDL, where we had a target of an effective concentration of about 12% impervious cover. That was based on studying the amount of impervious surfaces with biological response as measured by the benthic community. So we took what we did at UConn and we put it into a document that looks a lot like the statewide TMDL. We have a core document, and then we have watershed-based appendices that covers 20 different impaired segments that are impaired for aquatic life use in 15 different watersheds. But what this did was it allowed for us to communicate with towns that were going to be affected by upcoming permits, the relationship between stormwater and water quality. And you can see kind of in the bottom right-hand side the map of Connecticut. The little red stippling is an indication of how much impervious surface is in that area, and the gray shapes are the watersheds that are covered by the watershed response plan for impervious cover. So this here is just to orient you, because the next thing that we did was we took the information from the response plan, and we started working with our permitting group who was about to do the new MS4 permit. And this is just kind of showing you that on one side you see the map of Connecticut with the red stippling to show you where we have higher levels of impervious surfaces, and then the map on the other side are the communities that are covered by the MS4 permit. And the thought that we had was you didn't need us to do a TMDL in between, because once you do a TMDL, the next step is to do the permit. So if we could get to the permit quicker and put water quality requirements in the permit, then with the MS4 permit, you can see that those communities line up very well with higher levels of imperviousness, and we could hopefully get going on protecting water quality because of due to stormwater conditions. So one of the things that we did was we wrote fact sheets for every town pretty much in the state, 112 municipal fact sheets where we did mapping for where their impervious surfaces were, how it related to water quality impairments, where did we have information, where didn't we have information, where was water quality good. We plotted out the data that we had, compared it to a water quality benchmark. So we were trying to educate the towns with this tool to, again, get them set for understanding that managing stormwater is important. What that translated to was when DEP put together our MS4 permit in 2015 and our Department of Transportation stormwater permit in 2017, the MS4 permit switched from a focus on collecting data to implementation. And because of the statewide bacteria TMDL, the statewide mercury TMDL, the Long Island Sound TMDL, some work we were doing on phosphorus statewide, essentially we were able to incorporate in these permits a requirement to do, everybody had to do a certain level of best management practices. But if you had bacteria, nutrients, then you had in your watershed, then you had extra best management practices that needed to be incorporated. So we went to a straight to implementation approach to try and manage stormwater for water quality impacts. The last thing that we had done in 2016 is we felt we were on a path for bacteria and stormwater management, but we wanted to reach out to the public for refining what water quality focus areas we should be concentrating on and where should we do plans. So we had a big public effort at that time where we put together a document to kind of explain integrated water resource management and solicit feedback from the public as to what we should focus on, what qualities of environmental water quality we should focus on, and where should we start with our plan development. So this is what came out of that public process in 2016. Basically continued to work on bacteria and stormwater, but to expand the focus to include more work on nutrients, coastal areas, and aquatic life and wildlife support, and also to include both restoration and protection. So this is the feedback that we had from the public at that time. And at the same time, we had done an evaluation using an EPA tool called the Recovery Potential Tool, where we modeled different watersheds to see how likely, we could restore them or protect them. And we had put out a large document and again went to the public and said, we're, solicited information, where should we start with plans to focus on those? And so we had a list of water bodies and watersheds that came up as a result of our public outreach in 2016. So, what I'd like to do now is tell you what we've been doing since 2016, since that's the last time. And individually, here or there, you may have heard about some of the projects, but we haven't really come back and given you a big update. So that's what I want you to understand. With that information that you guys provided to us in 2016, what have we been doing? So we have been doing bacteria TMDLs, a little bit slower pace, because you'll see shortly that we've been doing a lot of other things too. And so we're moving bacteria TMDLs forward with this group that we have in progress right now. I think we will basically eliminate have TMDLs covering all the coastal waters for bacteria impairment. So we're beginning to go into get some of the freshwater ones done. But we're still doing bacteria TMDLs. We had some that were public noticed earlier this year. I expect in the next couple of months we'll have another group of bacteria TMDLs out for public comment. Where we've been spending a lot of time is trying to wrap our brains around how we wanted to do a watershed-based approach to nutrients. We didn't want to look at just a segment or just a discrete water body, because it's everything that's, as you guys know, everything that surrounds those segments and those water bodies that are affecting that water body. And so in order to get to good, we really need to work within a watershed. And everybody has resource constraints. So we were looking at what can we do that could extend the data that we have on a watershed scale for nutrients, and also give us a tool that could help us kind of do what-if scenarios. What do we need to do in order to get to a water quality objective for nutrients? So we put together the concept of having linked models. So we would have an upland watershed model that would deal with the nutrients and dissolved oxygen and solids in the upper watershed, that would provide information definitely for the upper watershed, but it would also provide information that could be used in a model for the downstream water body to get to good in water quality or protection in water quality in that water body. And this is the approach that we've been trying to put together to focus both on coastal embayments and the associated freshwater watershed that feeds that embayment, and also the same concept we're using for lakes. Again, looking at restoration and protection. So we've been trying to do a couple of demonstration projects to put these practices in place, assuming that if we're successful in these first areas, then we can take this concept and move it to other areas in the state. So I'm going to give you some examples of what we've been doing. Again, this is just